What if the most important thing spatial computing does has nothing to do with productivity? What if it's not about a more efficient inbox or a better way to run meetings or a cooler way to watch movies? What if the most significant impact, the thing that actually matters in 20 years, is what it does for the people that every previous computing era left behind? Every computing era has had a participation tax. In the desktop era, it was technical literacy. In the mobile era, it was economic access. Smartphones aren't cheap, and there are billions of people still navigating those barriers. But there's another dimension of exclusion that gets less attention: physical and cognitive interface compatibility. The standard computing interface, the keyboard, the mouse, the touchscreen, assumes a specific set of fine motor abilities, visual acuity, cognitive processing patterns. It was designed for a statistical average, not for the full range of human experience. Someone with significant motor impairment may not be able to operate a touchscreen reliably. Someone with dyslexia navigates text-heavy interfaces at a persistent disadvantage. Someone with certain cognitive profiles finds the abstract organizational logic of file systems and desktop metaphors deeply unintuitive. These aren't edge cases. The CDC estimates that roughly 26% of adults in the United States live with some form of disability. Designing for the average and patching in accessibility features afterward isn't good enough anymore, and spatial computing gives us an opportunity to design differently from the ground up. The input modalities of spatial computing, eye tracking, voice gesture, gaze-based navigation, are inherently more flexible than a keyboard and mouse. They accommodate a wider range of bodies and cognitive profiles by design. Eye tracking alone is transformational for users with limited mobility. Voice control in spatial environments can be contextual and spatial rather than command-based. Instead of memorizing a list of voice commands, a user can say, "Open that," while looking at a specific object, and the interface understands both the instruction and the reference. The language of interaction gets closer to how people actually talk. And gesture-based interfaces remove the abstraction layer of cursor and pointer. Reaching out and touching a digital object is a physical metaphor that maps onto natural human movement. It doesn't require learning a new vocabulary. Now, none of this means that spatial computing is automatically accessible. It still requires a very intentional design. It's not cheap right now, and it requires an industry to prioritize accessibility as a core design value rather than a checkbox. But the raw materials are better than anything previous eras offered. In education, the implications are equally significant, and they extend beyond accessibility into the fundamental question of how learning works. Decades of cognitive science research supports experiential and embodied learning as more effective than passive consumption for a broad range of learners. Doing something produces more durable learning than reading about it. Being inside an experience creates stronger memory anchors than observing it. Spatial computing can make experiential learning scalable. The biology class that can afford a cadaver lab can walk through a photorealistic digital anatomy. A history class can stand inside a recreated ancient city. An engineering class can assemble and test a machine in simulation before touching physical components. Right now, the quality of experiential learning is largely determined by the resources of the institution. Spatial computing has the potential to decouple experience quality from institutional wealth, to give students at an underfunded school access to the same quality of experiential content as a student at a top research university. But it's not a guaranteed outcome, of course. It requires investment, policy, and intentional design. But the technical ceiling is gone in a way that it wasn't even 5 years ago. Accessibility and pedagogy and learning are not niche applications. They're the deepest test of whether a technology is actually good. Not just good for the people who were already well served, but for everyone. The research and theory are compelling, but in my next video, we'll move from theory to practice, real organizations, real deployments, and what they actually learn when they put spatial computing in front of real students and workers. If you want to dive deeper into what we just covered, this video is brought to you by the first edition of Spatial Computing. We wrote this book to break down this complex emerging field clearly to help you stay ahead of the curve on this new frontier of life-changing technology. Bring your work, your passions, and your business into the future. This book serves as the perfect reference guide to help explain these concepts to your own clients, colleagues, or students. Your book also comes with an executive curriculum that you can use to train your personal or enterprise AI model, creating a massive and evidence-based advantage for your spatial workflow. Both physical and digital copies are available right now at spatialapex.co.